frustrated. Hello to my loneliness. I guess that ignorance is bliss. Take me back to before I knew. Rewind, take it out of cue. Innocence can be a young man's game. Signed up for the hall of shame. I wish I knew how much I miss not knowing that we're all screwed when we play our roles and ignore the problems. I like to be away in my patience. Stay up, I feel so outdated. How can we look the other way? Sun is out, but the sky is gray. What would happen if I took a chance? It's always hard at first glance. I don't wanna, but I know I gotta do it. The truth is hard to swallow, I think I'll chew it.
He looks so scary.
You won't get violent, Willie.
Who's he think he is, showing up like this?
He might kill you.
Hmm?
Oh, come on.
It's the transfer student.
Get lost, loser.
He's apparently a psycho.
Hi. Isn't that him?
He did something bad.
Hi. Isn't that him?
get involved. You shouldn't get involved with him.
Guess the trash pile just got bigger.
Why is he here?
He's a criminal, isn't he? Everyone's scared of him.
Hi. Isn't that him?
He did something bad.
Everyone's scared of him.
He looks so scary.
He won't get violent, will he?
Who's he think he is, showing up like this? Hi. Isn't that him?
He did something bad.
Hi. Isn't that him?
Don't get involved.
You shouldn't get involved with him.
Guess the trash pile just got bigger.
Why is he here?
He's a criminal, isn't he? Everyone's scared of him.
Hi. Isn't that him?
He did something bad.
Hi. Isn't that him?
Don't get involved.
You shouldn't get involved with him.
Unbelievable.
being over half a day late on your first day? Can you explain yourself? How could you have been lost for this long? It's almost lunchtime. Well, it's probably true that you're not used to the area yet, but you're still way too late. Will you pull yourself together? You were given fair warning yesterday. More importantly, I heard that you were caught along with that Sakamoto-kun. Don't get involved with him, okay? He's nothing but trouble. He wasn't like that when he was devoting his time to track and field, though. Anyway, break's almost over. Classes will end after 5th period today because of the subway accident. I'll have you introduce yourself when class resumes. Follow me. By the way, when you introduce yourself, be serious about it even if you're lying to the class, okay? Do not say anything unnecessary.
You think that's him? Huh? The one in the rumors?
Being super late on his first day? He really is insane.
He looks normal, though.
But he might slug us if we look him in the eye.
Settle down. Well, I'd like to introduce a transfer student. Today we had him attend from the afternoon on since he wasn't feeling well. All right, please say something to the class.
He seems quiet, but I bet when he loses it... I mean, he was arrested for assault, right?
So... Your seat will be... over there, the one that's open. Sorry, but can the people nearby please share your textbooks with him for today?
Ugh, this sucks.
Lies.
Did you catch that? Do those two know each other? Ew, does that mean he hit on her before transferring here?
That means she's cheating on him with Mr. Kamoshida. Then again, this is Takamaki-san we're talking about.
For real, that side of the room is totally awful.
Oh, right. The volleyball rally's in 2 days. Everyone's just changed classes, so make sure you use that time to get to know each other. Well then, let's get class started. Who's on duty today?
Everyone, please rise.
What's wrong? Are you sure you're okay? Also, it seems like people are already talking about you, but I'm not the one who told them. I can't even catch a break. Why do I have to deal with this? You should head straight home without stopping by anywhere. Sakura-san sounded pretty angry. Oh, and about Sakamoto-kun, don't get involved. Speak of the devil. What do you want? I heard the police caught you cutting classes today.
It was nothing.
And you haven't dyed your hair back to black either.
Sorry about that. I'll be waiting on the rooftop.
See, that's why I don't want you getting involved. Understood?
Why did you allow a student like him to transfer here? He's already started associating with Sakamoto. A student with a criminal record and the culprit of an assault case? At this rate, it'd be pointless how much I contribute to the school.
Now don't be like that. This school counts on you, Kamoshida-kun. You are our star. Still, a steady buildup is necessary behind such brilliance as well.
Your troubles never seem to end, do they, Principal Kobayakawa? All right, I understand. I'll continue to do my best to answer your expectations of me.
I'm not feeling it.
Wait, I mean, isn't that him?
Even the teachers bailed on him.
Is that true?
There you are. Sorry for calling you up here like this. I bet Kawakami already told you stuff like, don't get involved with him, huh? Figured as much. Then again, we're in the same boat. I heard you got a criminal record. Everyone's talking about it. No wonder you were so gutsy. What was all that happened? You know, how we almost got killed at a castle. It wasn't a dream, right? You remember it too, yeah? Well, just because we both remember it doesn't mean much, though. I mean, even if it was a dream, you saved me from Kamoshida. So yeah, thanks. That man, that Kamoshida we saw there. You probably don't know about it, but there are some rumors about him. You know, the guy you met at the school gates. The ripped one. That asshole who was all full of himself at the castle. No one says anything against him because he's some medalist who took the volleyball team to nationals. The way Kamoshida was king of that castle felt crazy real because of that. I wonder if we can go back to that castle again. Ah, forget it. It must have all been a dream. It has to be. Sorry to drag you out here like this. That's all I had to say. You know, we might be pretty similar. I feel like we're gonna get along just fine as troublemakers. I'm Ryuji Sakamoto. I'll come talk if I see you around. Don't ignore me, alright? See ya.
Hey, I got a call from the school. I hear you ditched half a day on your first day of school. Just when I was thinking you had it together this morning. Look, just behave yourself. One wrong step and your life is over. You do know what probation means, right? Good. Hey, what's up? Yeah, I just closed up shop. I'll head over in half an hour, as promised. What are you standing around for? Get upstairs and go to bed already. No, it's a guy. I just hired a part-timer. Don't forget to lock the door and turn all the lights off, okay? Yep, I'm leaving now. I told you, he's a part-timer.
Let's do it.
About time you've come to! On your feet, inmate! Our master wishes to speak with you. It's for your own sake that you take his words to heart.
First off, let us celebrate our reunion. Oh, you've awakened to your powers, and special ones at that. Your rehabilitation can finally begin. There is no need to understand it all for the time being. You will be training the power of persona, which you have awakened to. Personas are, in other words, a mask, an armor of the heart when confronting worldly matters. I have high expectations for you.
You have no choice but to hone your strength. It's not because we're forcing you, but because this is your fate. Neglect it and you will die.
By the by, have you come to appreciate the Metaverse Navigator? Using it will allow you to come and go between reality and palaces. I bestowed it to you as a means to train you as a thief.
The Metaverse Navigator is a gift from our master. You better take care in using it, inmate. Devote yourself to your training so that you may become a fine thief.
It must be disheartening to make use of the Metaverse Navigator alone. Should there be others who would prove beneficial to you, I will grant it to them as well. This is all for you to grow as a most excellent thief.
It's time. Go back and enjoy whatever rest you might have.
Seriously? What's going on?
Look, isn't that her?
You mean that one with the red ribbon? I guess so.
She's so thin. It's not fair. I've got my hair in a ponytail too.
Okay, and what's that got to do with being thin?
Please, take my seat. My station's coming up.
Are you sure? Oh, then.
Oh, wow, what speed. I mean, excuse me, that seat was for this lady. Oh. It's all right. I can understand his position as well. I'm sorry I couldn't be any help.
It's all right, dearie. Don't you worry.
Please allow me to carry your luggage at least.
Thank you. Ain't it heavy, though?
Not at all. I train plenty. Pardon me. Thank you so much for earlier. For speaking up when I offered my seat on the train. You're a second year at Shujin Academy, correct? I'm a first year there myself. Thanking you totally slipped my mind back on the train, and I didn't want to be rude to my senpai. Please excuse me.
Class is starting. What's the answer?
This is it.
Correct.
No way.
Sheesh. What?
Hey there, Takamaki. Things have been pretty dangerous lately with all those accidents.
Sorry, I have a photo shoot today. It's for the special summer issue, so I can't afford to miss it.
Hey now, being a model's fine and dandy, but don't work your pretty little self to the bone. You mentioned you weren't feeling well, right? Something about appendicitis?
Yes, I keep planning to go to the hospital, but I've been too busy. Sorry to worry you.
You must be lonely too. I feel bad for keeping your best friend at practice so often. Oh, and be careful around that transfer student. He's got a criminal record after all. If something were to happen to you...
Thank you. Please excuse me.
Yeah.
Yo. I want to talk about that castle from yesterday. I tried telling myself it was all just a dream, but I couldn't do it. I can't act like nothing happened. It's all connected to that bastard Kamoshida, after all. I want to find out what's up with that place, no matter what. And you know, you're the only person I can rely on for this stuff, so... You in? Nice! Okay, glad we're in this together. I think we should just try and retrace our steps from yesterday. In the meantime, you're walking to the station, right? Let's go together. Let me know if you notice any other weird buildings on the way. If a huge castle like that really exists, I'm sure we'll find it in no time. When did they build something like that, though? We walked that way from here, right? When you put it that way, I'm not so sure anymore. All right, this way. Let me know if you notice something. Huh? We're at school. There wasn't anything out of place along the way, right? I didn't see no castle either. We must have made a wrong turn somewhere. Let's try again. Don't worry, I won't mess up this time. Let's go. For real? Is it smaller than we think it is? What do you think? I already did that, but I didn't see anything like it around here. Huh? Phone. Hey, that reminds me. Didn't you have a navigation app thingy on back then? You didn't notice? I heard stuff that sounded like one coming from your phone. You know, didn't it say stuff like, returned to the real world, or something like that? Let me see your phone for a bit. What's this eyeball-looking thing? Wait, what? What a weird app. Oh, wait, this is it! I knew it! It is a navigation app! There's even your search history! Aw, man, I'm such a genius! Let's try using it. Then I'll do it.
Kamoshida. Shujin Academy. Pervert. Castle. Beginning navigation.
There we go! And then we went in a certain direction and... Hey, what are you... Huh? What the hell? Look! It's the castle from yesterday! We made it back. That means what happened yesterday was for real too. Ah! Those clothes! That happened last time too, huh? What's with that outfit? You like it? What's going on here? This makes no effing sense at all!
Hey! Stop making a commotion!
You?
The shadows started acting up, so I came here wondering what it could be. To think you guys would come back to the entrance when you barely managed to escape.
What is this place? Is it the school?
That's right.
But it's a castle!
This castle is the school, but only to this castle's ruler.
The castle's ruler?
I think you called him Kamoshida? It's how his distorted heart views the school.
Kamoshida? Distorted? Explain it in a way that makes sense!
I shouldn't have expected a moron to get it.
What did you say? What was that?
It must be the slaves captive here.
For real? Oh shit, it's for real! We saw other guys held captive here yesterday. I'm pretty sure they're from our school.
Most likely on Kamoshida's orders. It's nothing out of the ordinary. It's like that every day here. What's more, you two escaped yesterday. He must have lost his temper quite a bit.
That son of a bitch!
Ryuji?
This is bullshit! You hear me, Kamoshida?!
Doing that isn't going to open it, you know. Still, it seems you have your reasons.
Hey, Mona!
It's Morgana!
Do you know where those voices are coming from?
You want me to take you to them? Well, I guess I could guide you there. But only if he comes with us. I just want to get a better look at your powers, even if you don't agree. I bet this guy'll go on even if he has to do it alone. Are you gonna leave him? It's settled then.
For real? Thanks, man.
All right, let's do this. Follow me. This is our infiltration point.
Ain't that where we escaped out of last time?
That's right. Not barging in through the entrance is one of the basics of phantom thievery.
How are we supposed to know about that stuff?
I'll make sure to teach you as we go. Come on, follow me.
So, sorry for dragging you into all of this. But I just can't forgive that bastard Kamoshida doing whatever the hell he wants. Really though, thanks for coming along. I owe you big time. Man, this place is as creepy as always.
Mm-hmm. Now make sure you do exactly as I say, all right? Follow me. Let's go. Shoot. I had a feeling there would be guards here. It looks like we're going to have to start fighting our way forward.
For real?
Oh boy. I'll just teach you the basics of battle for now. You'd better not forget all of this. Always try to ambush enemies instead of rushing everywhere headlong. Attack from behind whenever you can. You'll need to rip their masks off to momentarily break the control that the palace ruler has over them. If you succeed, your opponent will be caught off guard, allowing us to jump in for a preemptive attack.
So, we want to get the jump on him and make the first strike. Okay, got it.
You know you're just going to be watching, right? You don't have a persona. But anyway, let's go.
Show me your true form!
All right, the first move is ours! Zoro! A spectacular victory!
It's a step forward.
All right.
Why ain't anyone here? Damn it! They were here before! Where'd they go?
Quiet down.
Oh yeah, there were more of them further in, too.
They might have been transferred already.
Oh crap, I can hear footsteps coming. Lots of them.
It would be a problem if they discovered us now. Hey, let's head into that room. We should be able to hide in there until they leave. The shadows probably won't come in here.
How can you tell?
There's a lack of distortion here, meaning the ruler's control over this area is weak.
Is this a classroom?
Now do you understand? This place is another reality that the ruler's heart projects.
This is Kamoshida's reality? Shit makes no sense at all.
One could say it's a world in which one's distorted desires have materialized. I call such a place a palace.
A palace?
This is happening because he thinks the school is his own castle.
So, it became like this because he just thought of it like that? That son of a bitch!
You must really hate this Kamoshida guy.
Hate doesn't even cover how I feel. Everything is that asshole's fault!
I don't know what happened between you two, but don't let your emotions get the better of you. His lackeys are everywhere inside. You're curious about your outfit, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm curious as hell about it too.
That's also because of this world.
More stuff that makes no sense.
Anything distorts according to how a ruler pleases within his palace. A school can turn into a castle like this, after all. In order to prevent such distortions, one must hold a powerful will of rebellion. Your appearance is a manifestation of that. It's the image of rebellion that you hold within.
I'm so fed up with all this! I'm more curious about you than his clothes! What the hell are you anyways?
I'm a human. An honest-to-God human.
No, you're obviously more like a cat.
This is, well, it's because I lost my true form, I think.
You think?
But I do know how to regain my true form. The reason why I snuck in here was for a preliminary investigation of those means. Well, I ended up getting caught, though. Besides, I've been tortured by Kamoshida too. I'm gonna make him pay for sure.
What is this, a comic book? This is seriously crazy.
If we're gonna keep going, we should hurry along. I'll be counting on your skills this time too, rookie. Got it?
Don't worry, I'm not gonna force it all on you. I thought it might help, so... I brought this just in case. It's a model gun, though, so it only makes sounds.
That's a toy!
But it looks totally real, so it'll at least fake him out. Oh, I brought some medicine, too. You know what they say, providing is something. Huh? Huh?
So you were planning this from the start. Well, fine. If you're ready to go, we'll resume our infiltration. There are probably still sentries making their rounds out there. Let's use this time to hash out our current situation.
Let's do it.
Damn it.
Well... Well then. Now then. Okay, let's go. Oh, there's a guard on duty here. The way to the training hall should be just beyond those bars.
So, what are we gonna do? Do we gotta fight it?
Seems like it. Just don't let it notice you beforehand. If it does, the palace's security level will rise.
And what do we do if that happens? Run away?
Well, the security level will go back down if we can beat more enemies without getting noticed.
That sounds, complicated.
Fine. I'll put together some info about the security level. This is crucial to successful palace infiltration. So make sure you actually read it, okay?
I'll reveal your true form.
You'll never get a date like this.
Now's our chance to strike! Go! Time for my persona! Impressive.
Yeah.
Let's go. You're mine.
Conform! My other self!
Ow. Yeah.
Scratch one enemy! One enemy remaining! This is the last one!
Persona! There!
Persona! Couldn't finish it.
Yeah.
I'll cut you off! Yeah! Victory!
All right.
Hey.
Hey, have you seen anyone who looks like an intruder? No, nobody yet.
Shoot. I had a feeling there would be a lot of enemies. It'd be impossible to dodge all of them.
Then what do? Should we try and take him down like before?
It's not that simple. We still have a long way to go, so we should be conserving energy.
I see. Sorry. Damn it. I wish I could fight. I'd at least be able to help out a little bit. But all I got is this toy from earlier. I'm such a loser.
Huh? Do you mean that gun?
Yeah, it looks real and all, but it doesn't shoot anything.
I see. Well, there is a way. Okay, we'll use that to take down the enemies.
What? Were you listening to me? It don't even shoot pellets.
Don't worry, I'm sure this'll work. Attack away, frizzy hair.
Dude, I keep saying it's not gonna fire anything.
You have the gun with you, right? Point it at a shadow and fire. How about that? Surprised? There are plenty of instances where rapid fire is going to be more useful than swinging your knife. Of course, you can run out of ammo, but using it all up does more good than letting it collect dust. All right, I'll show you my weapon too.
For real?
Listen to this. Let's get them! Our ammo's replenished. Go on, dump it into the enemy. Wait! Hmm. Nice.
Hmm? Hmm?
What do you want to do? Yes.
Show me your true form!
Alright, the first move is ours! Okay! Scratch one enemy. Yeah! Victory!
Okay.
A guard. I'm pretty sure that's where we need to be going too.
You guys gonna take it down again?
I guess that's our only choice. But wait, this might be a good time. Okay, I've decided. I'm gonna teach you two a special way to fight enemies. Something like that. Let's go! Listen, there's a distinct flow to battles. Let me show you. After all, seeing is... something. First, knock down all the enemies. Everything starts at that crucial step.
Sona! Go down!
All right! Now rush on in for an all-out attack!
Let's go!
That went really well. You're definitely fit for this.
What was that super move thing you just did?
I told you, it's called an all-out attack. If you manage to knock all the enemies down, you might be able to use it to beat them all at once.
Yeah, that was over quick.
It's a concentrated attack on defenseless enemies, after all. Now, as I mentioned before, I want you to be the head of our command. You can decide when we use this. Strike the enemy's weakness, knock them all down, then do an all-out attack. That's the ideal pattern. Yes!
What's this?
Yeah. Whoa! Damn it! This is bullshit!
How many times do I have to tell you to keep your voice down?
But this is beyond messed up! How do I open this?
Stop it! Leave us alone. It's useless.
Huh?
If we stay obedient, we won't be executed like you guys.
You're telling me you want to stay in a place like this?
Wait a minute. Were you planning on taking these guys out of here?
We can't just leave them here.
How stupid can you be?
What?
These are only humans in Kamoshida's cognition. They aren't real humans that have entered from reality. They're different from you two.
Cognition?
It means there's no point in saving them. They're different from the real ones in the real world. You could say that these are extremely similar looking dolls.
Hell? Why's it gotta be so complicated? So the school's a castle and the students are slaves. It's so on point that it makes me laugh. This really is the inside of that asshole's head.
Still, this is horrible. It must mean he treats them as slaves in the real world, too.
In the real world, too? Wait, I know these guys. They're members of the volleyball team, the one Kamoshida coaches for.
They must be physically abused every day. There's no way they'd be so beat up normally.
Don't tell me they're going through similar shit in reality?
Most likely. I mean, this proves that Kamoshida thinks of them as slaves.
So it might be for real. I heard that Kamoshida's using physical punishment. They're just rumors, but if they're true, wouldn't this be something to report to the police? I'll use these guys as evidence. If it all goes well, we can take down that asshole Kamoshida. Huh? It's not working. We can use the navigation app, but the camera's a no-go?
A navigation app?
That's what we used to come here. What about yours?
Whatever you do is fine, but we're gonna get caught if we stand around like this. We need to head back.
Hang on a sec. There's no other way. I'll just memorize their faces before going home. Let's go! Hey! Come on, man. Whoa!
What are your thoughts?
Yeah!
What's this?
What?
Yes!
Let's go!
Oh, man. This way!
Ugh, you knaves again? To think you'd make the same mistake again. You're hopeless.
The school ain't your castle! I've memorized their faces real good. You're going down!
It seems it's true when they say barking dogs seldom bite. How far the star runner of the track team has fallen.
What the hell are you getting at?
I speak of the track trader who acted in violence, ending his teammates' dreams. Oh, I can only imagine the pain of the others who were dragged under with your selfish act. What a surprise. So you're accompanying him without knowing anything at all. He betrayed his teammates and crushed their hopes. Yet he still carries on as carefree as ever.
That's not true!
What a tragedy. You blindly trusted this fool, and he's led you right to your death. Hurry up and dispose of them. I can't stand their stench.
God damn it!
Ryuji, move! Oh, we're surrounded.
I'll kill you! I'll kill you because King Kamoshida told us! I'll kill him because that's what he wants!
It's time. Ravage them!
Persona! There's more of them? This is bad. Failure!
It can't be.
Oh! Oh! You piece of...
I bet you simply came here on a whim and ended up like this, isn't that right?
No!
What a worthless piece of trash, getting emotional so quickly. How dare you raise your hand at me? Though it was only temporary, have you forgotten my kindness in supervising track practice?
It wasn't no practice, it was physical abuse! You just didn't like our team!
It was nothing but an eyesore. The only one who needs to achieve results is me. That coach who got fired was hopeless too. Had he not opposed me with a sound argument, I would have settled it with only breaking his star's leg.
What?
Do you need me to deal with your other leg too? The school will call it self-defense anyway.
Damn it. Am I gonna lose again? Not only can I not run anymore, the track team is gone too because of this asshole!
So that's why.
Once these two are dealt with, you're next.
Ryuji!
You're right. Everything that was important to me was taken by him. I'll never get him back.
Stay there and watch. Look on as these hopeless scum die for nothing because they sided with trash like you.
No, that's what you are. All you think about is using people. You're the real scumbag, Kamoshida!
What are you doing? Silence him!
stop looking down on me with that stupid smile on your face!
You made me wait quite a while. You seek power, correct? Then let us form a pact. Since your name has been disgraced already, why not hoist the flag and wreak havoc? The other you who exists within desires it thus. I am thou art I. There is no turning back. The skull of rebellion is your flag henceforth!
What can you do? Cower in fear and watch!
This was well. Right on. What's up, Persona? This effing rocks! Now that I got this power, it's time for payback! Yo, I'm ready. Bring it!
Don't mock me, you brat!
Blast him away, Captain Kidd!
What troublemakers that bother King Kamoshida with trifle matters?
Kamoshida's cognition ain't changing, right? Then I'll act like the troublemaker I am. Let's do this, Captain Kidd!
This'll hurt.
Persona! Captain Kidd!
Persona! You're mine.
Watch your health! When you get some breathing room, heal! I got too reckless. I'll back out and focus on support. Hey, you have to hang on, okay?
Yeah, keep smiling, buddy.
Persona! Go down!
I am a loyal subject of the glorious King Kamoshida. So why have I lost?
How about that?
Whoa. So, Ryuji had the potential too.
Even if you apologize now, I ain't forgiving you.
I told you that this is my castle. It seems you still don't understand.
What? Takamaki?
Oh! What a meowvelous and beautiful girl!
What's going on? Yeah, now that you mention it. But why is she even here? Hey! Let go of her, you perv!
How many times must I tell you until you understand? This is my castle, a place in which I can do whatever I want. Everyone wishes to be loved by me. That is, everyone besides slow-witted thieves like you.
Takamaki, say something!
Calm down, Ryuji. It seems that girl isn't the real one. She's the same as those slaves. A being made from Kamoshida's cognition of her.
Are you jealous? Well, I'm not surprised. Women aren't drawn to problematic punks like you.
Damn it!
Clean them up this instant!
We're outnumbered. Let's scram before we get surrounded.
We're not gonna do anything and just run?
Thank God you've got a level head.
Fine. We'll expose what you really are no matter what. You better be ready for us.
I was beginning to get bored of torturing the ones here. Come at me whenever you want, if you don't care about your life.
Ignore him. Let's go!
Anyways, I don't remember changing into this. Should I be happy about that? Then again, it ain't as bad as yours.
Did you find them?
Quiet!
No! Search that way!
So what's going on? I'm completely lost, man.
I told you before, when a persona user opposes a palace's ruler and becomes a threat to them, this happens. It's to prevent you from being affected by distortions.
Is this a skull?
Your appearance reflects your inner self. It's the rebel that slumbers within, not that you'll get it.
Nope.
Then stop asking questions and accept what you see for what it is.
Easy for you to say. Wait, we're in deep shit!
I said to be quiet!
We might have gotten away here, but we're still screwed with Kamoshida at the real school.
That's quite sharp of you. For being an idiot. Relax. The Kamoshida in reality can't possibly know about what happens here. A shadow is the true self that is suppressed. A side of one's personality they don't want to see.
So, we're okay?
Did the Kamoshida in reality remember about the execution? There you have it.
Alright. Now that we know that, all we gotta do is...
Wait. I guided you as promised. It's your turn to cooperate with me. That's why I was super nice about teaching you idiots everything.
Huh? Cooperate?
Don't you remember? I originally came here for an investigation. I need to erase the distortion from my body and regain my real form. That's why we must delve deep into mementos and...
Whoa, hold up. What are you going on and on about? We never said anything about helping you out.
Huh? Don't tell me. Are you not going to repay the hospitality I showed you? Especially you. You're going to up and leave, even though you're already part of my master plan? Is it because I'm not human? Because I'm like a cat? Is that why you're making a fool of me?
We're busy. Thanks for everything, Cat. You've got guts being a cat and all. See you around.
Hey! What the hell? Oh, seriously? Why are you wrapping this up like everything's all hunky-dory? Oh, hell no! Get back here!
You have returned to the real world. Welcome back.
Thank God. We're back. Yeah, I dragged you around a lot, huh? Sorry, man. I'm dead tired. How you holding up? Me too. And I'm gonna sleep like a rock when I get home. But damn, if what we saw was for real, oh, this is gonna get good. I totally remember the faces of the guys Kamoshida was treating like slaves. Once we make him fess up to any physical abuse, Kamoshida will be done. So, wanna help me look for those guys or any witnesses? Now that's what I'm talking about! Hey, so... if you're thinking of laying low because you got a record, I don't think that'll help. Everyone already knows. They totally got you pegged as a criminal. Kamoshida opened his damn mouth. No one else besides a teacher could have leaked it that fast. It doesn't matter if it's a student or a club. That asshole just wrecks things he doesn't agree with. Just like he did with me. No one will take anything I say seriously. Still, those rumors about him getting physical might be real. And after seeing Kamoshida's distorted heart thing in person, there's no way I can just sit back. I'm counting on you. Don't worry, I'm hyped about this too.
Acting as a phantom thief would have been more efficient alone. You could have gone about it that way. However, you did not. There are merits to having associates. That's what you decided. Am I wrong?
I am thou. Thou art I. Thou hast acquired a new vow. It shall become the wings of rebellion that breaketh thy chains of captivity. With the birth of the chariot persona, I have obtained the winds of blessing that shall lead to freedom and new power.
All right. Oh, right. I haven't eaten anything since lunch. It'd be weird splitting off now, so why don't we grab a bite somewhere? Just follow me. I mean, I totally gotta hear about your past. What? The hell, man? How much shittier can that asshole get? Are you for real? If it was me, I wouldn't calm down until I punched that dick in the face! So, you left your hometown and you're living here now, huh? We might be more alike than I originally thought. It's not exactly how, but, you know, I guess it's how we're treated like a pain in the ass by the people around us. Like we don't belong. I did something stupid at school before, too. The place you're living now is in Yongen, right? It's rush hour on the subways. I suggest you kill some time before heading home. What the hell, man? You barely touched your food. Just let me do it. I gotta thank you for helping me. Anyways, I got your back like you got mine from tomorrow on. As long as we do something about Kamoshida, I'm sure we'll both feel better about being at school. Oh yeah! Tell me your number. Oh, chat ID too. Just you wait, Kamoshida. We're gonna start right away tomorrow. First, let's hit up those guys that were kept as slaves. The volleyball rally's tomorrow, huh? Shit's recommended by Kamoshida. Makes me want to gag. But, thanks to that, we got no classes in the afternoon, and we can walk around unnoticed. Well, I guess we can work out the details tomorrow. Come on, you gotta eat more! There's tons of ginger here! So, about this plan to take down Right.
I haven't been sleeping well lately. Whenever I close my eyes, I keep thinking about too many things.
Shiho.
Nationals are coming up soon, so I keep thinking, should someone like me really be on the starting lineup?
Don't worry. Just be confident in yourself. Your skills have been recognized. It's all because you work harder than anyone else.
Yeah. Volleyball's all I have after all.
More importantly, was that injury okay? It looked really swollen.
No, it's nothing. It's normal. Especially since a meet's coming up.
Sorry to interrupt, Zui. Mr. Kamoshida told me to get you.
Huh? What does he want?
He didn't say.
It'll be fine. I bet it's a meeting about the starting lineup or something.
Yeah. Well, I better go.
Yep. Good luck! Hang in there, Shiho.
You're home. I take it you actually went to school today? Hey, you better not be getting into trouble. People have already got their eyes on you. Don't do anything too stupid, got it? I don't know what you've been up to, but trust me, you'll be gone if you start causing problems. In case you forgot, your life is not a free one right now. Are you even listening to me? Just stay away from bad influences, okay? Hey, I'm gonna head home for the night. I'll lock the store up. Don't go wandering out.
I'll just add this.
Welcome to the Velvet Room. I thought about resuming our previous conversation tonight. That is why I have summoned you. What are your thoughts? Are you becoming accustomed to this place? Ah, glad to hear it. It seems you have nerves of steel. The goal of your rehabilitation is to thwart the fated ruin. However, such a feat cannot be done by you alone. Today, you entered a partnership with someone who awoke to the same power, did you not? Involving yourself with others is an important foundation for your recovery. You've done well. That said, I am not advising the formation of superficial relationships. It must not be a frivolity, but a ring of those who would, by morals or faith, lend you their strength. In other words, they are bonds with those who have been robbed of their places to belong. The expansion of said ring will, in return, help you mature as well.
Personas are the strength of heart. The stronger the bonds that surround you, the more power your personas will gain.
There are countless people in the city who have talents that a weakling like you doesn't. You better rack that noggin of yours and get them on your side. We'll change that into power.
Indeed, you should be prepared to use even myself, or your ambitions will not come to fruition. We have a deal then.
I am thou. Thou art I. Thou hast acquired a new vow. It shall become the wings of rebellion that breaketh thy chains of captivity. With the birth of the Fool persona, I have obtained the winds of blessing that shall lead to freedom and new power.
All right.
Well, you will understand it all in due time. Continue devoting yourself to your rehabilitation.
Now this conversation's over. Get lost, inmate.
How annoying. We've barely started high school and already they're making us play at a volleyball rally? And why are they pitting us against the teacher team? Kamoshida's gonna crush us. We get to see his technique live and in person, though. We should totally get spiked on. Yeah, okay. You're gonna get your face smashed in. Just look at how banged up the volleyball team is. What the hell goes on during their practices?
Okay, quiet down.
Man, you still got it, coach.
Thanks. Let's go for one more.
All right.
Still sticks out. Hasn't changed a bit.
Pretty boring.
Right?
Sorry. Hey, are you all right? Someone, take him to the nurse's office.
You get that side.
He'll pay soon enough.
All right, let's resume the match.
That asshole's acting like a king over here, too. Get to know each other better, my ass. It's just a one-man show for him to stroke his ego. Oh, and how he acted like he was worried about Mishima. Oh, what an abusive D-bag. Well, anyways, now's our chance to go look for the guys we saw were slaves yesterday. Let's look for the faces we saw at the castle. All the members of the team should be here today. I'll be sure to find someone to spill about Kamoshida's physical abuse. Just you wait, asshole. The first one that popped out was a guy from Class D, so let's start from there. That's your class. Hopefully you can get him to talk without any issues. People have been avoiding me lately, so... Oh, but you're kinda in the same boat, huh?
You should stay away from him.
Don't wander around.
That's why I don't like him. He got arrested for hurting someone, I think.
What? Are you skipping out on the volleyball rally? I guess I expected from you, Transfer.
Hey, that's the guy who was over at that castle.
You too, Sakamoto? What do you guys want? It's from practice. What does that have to do with anything?
Kamoshida did it to you, right? Look, I ain't gonna tell anyone you squealed. Just tell us about how Kamoshida's abusing you.
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not. You guys are talking complete nonsense.
Don't try and hide it. We already know.
You know? You have proof.
Well,
This is ridiculous. Please, leave me alone. You're really bothering me.
All right, that's enough. Come on, let's go. That injury ain't normal, and he still won't fess up. Ah, crap. If we keep going at this pace, the ball game's gonna end. Guess that'd be faster. I'll check the practice building for people before clubs start. You handle the classroom building. There's a third year on the volleyball team that I remember. I think he's in 3C? He was getting beat pretty badly at the castle. He might have some injuries here, too. Anyways, I'll hit you up if I find anything. See ya! Get lost, loser.
Yikes! He's coming this way!
Get lost, loser.
Yikes! He's coming this way!
Wow, he's really here?
He's apparently a psycho.
What? So that's him? He got arrested for hurting someone, I think.
Get lost, loser.
Yikes! He's coming this way!
Wow, he's really here?
He's apparently a psycho.
What? So that's him? He got arrested for hurting someone, I think.
Let's do it. Get lost, loser.
Yikes! He's coming this way!
You should stay away from him.
Don't wander around. Hi. Isn't that him? Impressive. Get lost, loser.
Yikes! He's coming this way!
Really?
Yeah? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I prefer to avoid people with criminal records.
Uh-huh, sure. Why is a criminal here?
You should stay away from him.
Yikes! He's coming this way!
Where'd you hear that?
I can't do it.
Can I talk to you for a sec? It'll be quick. Anyway, what's with you? Like how you were late the other day was a lie and all? There's that weird rumor about you too.
What do you want with him?
Right back at you. You're not even in our class.
We just happened to get to know each other.
What are you planning on doing to Mr. Kamoshida?
Huh? I see. I getcha. You're all buddy-buddy with Kamoshida after all.
This has nothing to do with you, Sakamoto.
If you found out what he's been doing behind your back, you'd dump him right away.
Behind my back? What's that supposed to mean?
You wouldn't get it.
Anyway, people are already talking about you two. I don't know what you're trying to pull, but no one's gonna help you. I'm warning you, just in case. That's all.
Why she gotta be so aggressive all the time? She's been like that since middle school. Anyways, that's not what we're here to talk about. I had no luck on my end. What about you? Did anything like someone's name turn up? Huh? Special coaching, huh? True. I always see the guy covered in bruises. Let's go talk to him before he leaves then. Hey, got a second? Sakamoto? And you too. Come on, we just want to chat. Kamoshida's been coaching you, huh? You sure it's not just physical abuse?
Certainly not.
What are you talking all polite for? Anyways, we saw him spike you today, right in the face.
That was just because I'm not good at the sport.
Still, that doesn't explain all the other bruises you've got.
They're from practice.
Is he forcing you to keep quiet?
That's...
What's going on here? Mishima, isn't it time for practice?
I'm not feeling well today.
What? Maybe you're better off quitting then. You're never going to improve that crappy form unless you show up to practice.
Didn't you hear? He ain't feeling well.
Well, Mishima, are you coming to practice or not?
I'll go.
As for you, any more trouble and you'll be gone from this school for sure.
Bastard.
Same goes for you. Didn't the principal tell you to keep in line? Just don't get in the way of my practice. All these unsettling rumors are making the students anxious after all.
That's your own goddamn fault.
This won't get us anywhere. Let's go, Mishima. Shujin Academy is a place where those with aspirations come to learn. Unworthy students like yourselves don't have any right to be here. Get with the program.
Yes, sir.
That asshole. He's gonna pay for this.
There's no point.
Huh?
Proving that he's physically abusing us is meaningless. Everybody knows. The principal, our parents, they all know, and they all keep quiet about it.
This has gotta be a joke.
Don't be a pain. You don't understand what I'm going through. Shouldn't you, of all people, know that nothing's going to help?
I'll try one more time to persuade the other guys. That's all I can do.
I'll just add this.
Shouldn't you be heading to volleyball?
Uh-huh.
That bruise above your eye. Is that from practice, too?
Yeah.
Are you sure you're not pushing yourself too hard?
I'm okay. Volleyball's the only thing I can do right. Shouldn't you take that?
It's probably just my part-time job, I think.
I should get going.
Shiho, Are you sure you're okay?
Uh-huh.
Yes. Today won't work. I'm not feeling so good. Sorry. Bye.
Hey, wasn't that Takamaki?
Rumor has it she's dating Kamoshida.
Seriously?
I heard people saw them in his car together.
You know, she seems pretty easy, huh? You think I'd have a chance too?
Come on, dude. You can't go after Kamoshida's bitch.
What? Oh, I'm in the way, aren't I? Sorry. Huh? Well... You don't look familiar. Could you be that transfer student from Class D? This might not be any of my business, but don't let the rumors get to you, okay? I'm glad to hear that. My best friend is often misunderstood too, all because of her looks. Sorry. I didn't mean to drag on like that. Anyway, I have to go to practice. I'll see you around.
Damn it! What the hell? Is that what it looks like? All of them kept saying the same shit Mishima was talking about. Kamoshida had to have told him something. At this rate, looks like we'll have to go to him directly. I know. But seriously, isn't there something we can do? No way I'm gonna give in like this. Can you think of anything? Oh, that'd be fine if we could do it without getting caught, but if we did, we'd be seriously done for. You got any other ideas? So you want to tell them about the castle? They'd never believe us. Have any other ideas? What do we do? The king? You mean that other world's Kamoshida? I didn't think of that, but is there any meaning to...
I finally found you!
You say something?
Don't think you can get away with not paying me back for helping you.
That voice... Is that you, Morgana?
How dare you up and leaving me the other day?
The cat's talking?
I am not a cat! This is just what happened when I came to this world. It was a lot of trouble finding you two.
Wait, you came to our world? Does that mean you've got a phone?
You don't need one when you're at my level. I did get pretty lost making my escape, though.
That aside, why can you talk? You're a cat!
How should I know?
You hearing this too? This is no time to be joking around!
You guys are having a rough time of this, I heard you mention something about witnesses.
Oh, shut up!
You know, I could tell you a thing or two about what to do about Kamoshida. You were pretty close just a moment ago.
God, that condescending attitude. This thing's gotta be Morgana.
You were still doubting me?
God, quiet down!
We really have to be looking for a cat in a busy time like this?
I just heard a meow somewhere near here. Didn't you hear it?
Make sure you check every nook and cranny around.
Meow? Does that mean only us two can understand what you're saying?
Looks like it.
What the hell's going on? Anyways, what you were talking about earlier, is it for real?
You're quite the skeptic for being an idiot.
Hey, tell us more. Then again, this probably ain't the best place. Here, stick it in your bag for now. It should be just small enough to fit.
Hey! How dare you treat me like... Don't be so rough with me!
Enough of that! You said you know how we can do something about Kamoshida, right?
It has to do with what this guy was talking about earlier. You'll need to attack his castle.
What do you mean?
That castle is how Kamoshida views this school. He doesn't realize what happens in there, but it's deeply connected to the depths of his heart. Thus, if the castle disappears, it would naturally impact the real Kamoshida.
What'd happen?
A palace is a manifestation of a person's distorted desires. So, if that castle were no more... Precisely. You sure pick up things fast.
For real? He's gonna turn good? But is that really getting back at him?
Erasing a palace essentially means forcing the owner to have a change of heart. However, even though their warped wants disappear, the crimes they committed remain. Kamoshida will become unable to bear the weight of those crimes, and he'll confess them himself.
You for real? That's possible?
And since the palace will no longer exist, he'll forget what we did there as well. Not only will we be able to bring Kamoshida down, but there won't even be a trace of our involvement.
That's amazing! You are one incredible cat!
True. Except for the cat part.
So, how do we get rid of the palace?
By stealing the treasure held within.
Stealing?
I'll tell you more once you agree to go ahead with this. It's my most valuable secret plan, after all. If you want to help me out, I'll gladly teach you. What's your call?
Our luck's running dry looking for witnesses. Guess we have no choice but to go along.
Good. Oh, right. There's one more thing I should tell you. If we erase a palace, there is no doubt that the person's distorted desires will be erased as well. But desires are what we all need in order to survive. The will to sleep, eat, fall in love. Those sorts of things.
What are you getting at?
If all of those yearnings were to vanish, they'd be no different than someone who is shut down entirely. They may even die if they're not given proper care. So...
They might die?
Will you listen to everything I have to say first?
Would their death be our fault?
Aren't you determined enough to face those kinds of risks?
Hey, what do you think? For real?
Sheesh. I come all this way and this is what I get. It's not like anyone will ever find out.
That's not the point! If we just go around secretly doing whatever we want, we'd be no better than that effing Kamoshida!
Isn't this your only option? I'll come back later. Make sure you've made your decision by then.
Man, we're getting all worked up for nothing. Damn it! I'll try and see if I can figure out another way. Come on, let's get out of here.
Bye-bye. Is it getting a little warmer?
Finally starting to feel like spring.
I'm curious. See you.
Feels kind of nice out. Are you serious? Great.
I don't feel like doing anything. I see.
Well, see you later.
So that's what happened. That's so funny.
Hi. Isn't that him?
You're kidding. Isn't that crazy?
Don't wander around.
Does it feel warmer to you? Hey, does it feel warmer?
Right? Bye-bye.
Is that true?
I had no idea.
So that's what you meant.
For real? See you.
I don't think so.
Bye-bye.
That's crazy! Come on, knock it off.
Oh, isn't this great?
What happened next? Oh, yeah.
Oh, dear.
Nice.
See you. I see. What?
Really? That's hilarious.
Seriously?
Huh? Seriously?
Come on, let's have some fun.
No way, man.
And? Is it getting warmer? Nah. Whoa.
Let's do it.
Fine, isn't it?
That's off the hook.
See ya.
What do you mean?
No way.
No way.
Well, see you later.
Are you for real?
The weather's beginning to warm up.
Aoyama Ichome. This is Aoyama Ichome.
Hi. Isn't that him?
Train doors are now closing. Please stand back. Aoyama Ichome. This is Aoyama Ichome. Platform number 2, service to Asakusa is departing soon. Please watch your step.
That's hilarious.
Shucks.
Train doors are now closing. Please.
My, that's great. What?
My, how amazing!
Hey, isn't it pretty amazing? Toad's insane, don't you think?
It's all anyone talks about now.
I'm so miserable.
Nice.
Will you please give it a rest? I told you, I'm not feeling up to it. Wait, what? That's not what you promised. And you call yourself a teacher? This has nothing to do with Shiho. Shiho's starting position. Wait, were you listening? Haven't you heard of privacy? No, I was out of line. Sorry. So, how much did you hear? Shiho. It's nothing at all. Nothing. Stop following me! Just leave me alone!
Finally starting to feel like spring.
Why? Why do you keep worrying about me?
That's crazy! Come on, let's have some fun!
What the heck? I really don't get you. I don't have anything to talk about with you. It was just an argument.
Thank you very much!
You've heard the rumors, haven't you? About Mr. Kamoshida. Everyone says we're getting it on. But that's so not true. That was him on the other line. I avoided giving him my number for the longest time. He told me to go to his place after this. You know what it means. If I turn him down, he said he'd take my friend off as a regular on the team. I've been telling myself this is all for Shiho's sake. I can't take it anymore. I've had enough of this. I hate him. But still, Shiho's my best friend. She's all I have left in that sorry excuse of a school. Tell me, what should I do? Sorry, I shouldn't have asked. It's not your problem. What am I saying? I've barely even talked to you before. No, this was all my fault. You're so weird. Usually everyone just ignores me. Are you really a bad person? I've heard people talking about you, but I just don't see it. That you assaulted someone. That you almost killed them. I kinda had a feeling they were all just exaggerations. You seemed lonely. Almost like you didn't belong anywhere. We're the same in that regard. Maybe that's why it was so easy for me to talk to you. Is there really no way for me to help Shiho? I wish he'd just change his mind. Like, forget about me and everything. As if something like that would ever happen. I wasn't asking for a serious response. But I do feel a bit better now. I'm gonna head home. Don't tell anyone what I told you, okay? I'll try and think of a way to persuade Kamoshida. Well, thanks.
Suzui, are you leaving?
What is it?
Mr. Kamoshida's asking for you. He's in the PE faculty office.
What did he say?
I don't know. Well, I have to go.
On.
You're late. Where have you been? Just don't come running to me when you get arrested. That'll be it for you, remember? By the way, you haven't been hanging around any bad influences, have you? Huh. Well, they've got to be pretty strange to want to spend time with you. Just make sure you're careful who your friends are, if you don't want them ruining your life. Ooh, look at the time. Seriously, think about how I feel having to stay up here waiting for you. Hey, I'm leaving. In the future, try not to come back so damn late. Understood?
Let's do it.